Hello, and thank you for joining us for this informational session about the campaign for SYA, featuring a conversation with President of School Year Abroad, Tom Hassan, and three recent financial aid students, Francis, Dylan, and Janae Rose, along with their resident directors, Pat Scanlon from Italy and Megan Lewis-Roof from Spain. I am Erin Erickson, SYA's Director of Advancement, and it is my pleasure to welcome you today. I want to start by thanking you for taking the time to learn more about the campaign for SYA, and specifically more about the campaign's impact on student aid. Last week, we hosted a talk with our two campaign co-chairs, Alex Alger, France 79 China 12 parent, and Jamie Broderick, France 71. Alex and Jamie talked about their SYA experience, how they got involved in volunteering, and why they believe the campaign for SYA is important right now in SYA's history and in global history. If you haven't had a chance to view that webinar yet, I encourage you to do so at campaignforsya.org/events. So just as we did last week, we will once again be recording this webinar, and it may be distributed to others who were not able to attend today. Also, we've allocated some time at the end to cover a few questions, so please feel free to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. A quick note about campaign progress, with tremendous thanks to those who have given to the campaign thus far, including, happy to say, another $100,000 gift that came in this week. We have reached the $12 million mark, continuing to make progress toward the campaign goal of $18 million, which we need to raise by June 30th of 2021. Now, I want to start with some quick stats about financial aid at SYA. Nearly 50% of families receive financial aid each year. $2 million in financial aid funds are available from SYA each year. Grants range in size from $1,000 to $59,000. The average grant is $30,000, or approximately half of tuition. There are three named scholarship funds: the Halsey Scholar, the Alvarez Global Scholars, and the Villalta Scholar. In addition, some SYA classes will, through their giving to the SYA Annual Fund, have a class scholar named. While the criteria has changed over time, the most recent to name a class scholar is for an alumni class to raise half of tuition, which, as mentioned above, or mentioned, is the average grant size from a quarter of their classmates. The first class scholar was named in the 2006-07 school year, and since 92 more have been named all the way through 2020. That's actually really impressive in that amount of time. So thank you to all of the classes who have named a scholar. There are a variety of other scholarship opportunities available, and you can learn more about them at sya.org/scholarships. Most importantly, financial aid makes SYA possible for exemplary students like Francis, Dylan, and Janae Rose. I want to thank each of them for joining us today, and also thank you for your investment in SYA, which has made their experiences possible. Francis was one of two 2019-20 Alvarez Global Scholars. This is a new scholarship opportunity that was created by a $2 million financial aid endowment gift by the Alvarez family to fund the SYA experience for two public school students each year. Francis came to SYA Italy from Berkeley High School in California. Janae Rose from Charlotte Country Day School in Charlotte, North Carolina, was the 2019-20 Halsey Scholar. The Halsey Fund was made possible primarily by the Bulgari family and others who wanted to honor longtime SYA leader Woody Halsey when he retired in 2011 by creating a financial aid endowment in his name. Janae Rose is the 9th Halsey Scholar to study abroad with SYA. And Dylan came to SYA Italy in 2018-19 from Casa Grande High School in Petaluma, California. When I asked Pat Scanlon to help me identify an outstanding student who had received financial aid, Dylan was at the top of Pat's list, so he's here to talk with us about that today. At this point, I'd like to hand the virtual microphone over to SYA President Tom Hassan for a conversation with these students and their resident directors.
Thank you so much, Erin, and thank you and your team for pulling these wonderful webinars together and making them available beyond today to our SYA family. I also want to thank the folks on the screen with me. In particular, I want to say a special thanks to our two RDs here, Pat and Megan, who are nothing short of just magnificent at what they do. The RDs, as people can imagine, are pulled in many, many different directions all the time. And they step up to the plate and do a superb job each and every time, including last spring when we had to evacuate students very quickly out of Europe, and they made sure everyone was safe and headed back home, and then pivoted quickly with their faculty to have online education. So thank you too for all that you do all the time. And I want to say hi to our recent alums. Actually, you guys are in the SWA alumni family right now, and having graduated from Italy, two of you, and from Spain, Janae Rose. And so it's great to have you on the call today. And what I'd really love to do is just have a conversation with the group on the screen right now. And let me start with the students. And one thing I'm totally curious about, and I ask this of our alums every time I see them, is simply, how did you find out about SWA? Because it's we're out there trying to spread our word, and I'm just curious how you found out. So why don't we start with Francis? How'd you find out about SWA?
So I actually had some family that had experienced SYA, and when I was thinking about going abroad, SYA was sort of already in my brain as an organization that existed. And so it was sort of combined with prior knowledge, and then a simple Google search, study abroad programs, and I found SYA again through that, and I decided that it was the right program for me.
Great. Oh, wonderful. And that word of mouth and that whole kind of personal connection makes a big difference. So I'm glad to hear your story. Janae Rose, how about you?
Well, I found SYA through a representative that came to my school, and actually, when they came, I was too shy to go up to them. But later, I looked up SYA and I just went through the website. I think it was all in like one night, and I was so excited about the prospect of doing this. And then my mom didn't think I was serious. I'm like, Mom, I'm gonna go to Spain. I'm gonna do this. Look up this video. The kids are doing all these cool things. She's like, okay, but here I am now.
kind of humored you along, and then and when did she get on board that this is that you were going to do this?
I think when I got the call that I'd gotten the Halsey scholarship, so there was like no excuse to say, oh, well, I have to see about the money. She's like, okay, well, I guess you're going.
That's a great story. And Dylan, you were on the West Coast at a public high school. How did you find out about it?
It's a very roundabout way. So in ninth grade, in my Algebra 2 class, we did supplementary problems because we were the honors class, and those problems came from Phillips Exeter Academy's Algebra 2 class. So I looked into what they were all about, and I'm like, oh, they look interesting. I kind of want to apply there. So I end up getting rejected from there, but I go to their summer program, and in the summer program, I learn about SYA from flyers on the wall, go home, and I think, do that. And so I apply to SYA France, get rejected, then apply again junior year to Italy, and then I get in. So then I end up in Italy, which is just a totally tangentially, happenstantially amazing way to end up at SYA, I think.
I love that story. And don't you worry, Dylan, you mentioned that you actually applied to be a sophomore over in France, right? That was your
I
first...
applied sophomore year to be a junior in France.
Junior, okay. Because I just wanted to point out to people that traditionally we have juniors and seniors. We do take a small number of sophomores these days too. So that's just so that people on the webinar will know that. So here's another question for our recent alums or newly alums here. A question I've always asked is, capture that moment that's SWA for you, the moment when you're in country. What was the thing that just said, wow, this is SWA for me? And Janae Rose, was there that moment in Spain for you?
My moment came earlier on. It was during the immersion unit, and we went on an activity around the city where we had to find all these different places. Like we had to find the doctor's office and all these other key landmarks. And then I'd walked around with this group of kids I didn't really know yet, but they seemed really cool, and I was really interested in everything that was going on. And then we all decided to go get ice cream afterwards, and we all just walked down, and we were speaking in our broken Spanish because it was still really early. And just that freedom that we got to explore and be in a completely foreign place and figure out how to find our way and go on our unique paths, but we're all together. That was my, like, this is SYA moment.
Thanks. And Francis, how about you? What in Italy? What was that for you?
So it was actually essentially the same exact thing. But of course in Italy, I think it was maybe only our second or third week there. It was the same thing. We were walking around the city, finding different landmarks, and I think I was just so taken aback by the beauty of the town. And it was something that I had never experienced before. And I remember texting all my friends saying, you guys, it is exactly out of a storybook. Like, you know, the beauty of Italy is undescribable. And I just felt very fortunate to be there. And I think that that was sort of the, you know, first moment that I was like, this is SYA and I am so happy to be here.
Great. Did you guys get the gelato right afterward? That's good. And Dylan, how about you? What was your moment in Italy?
Well, there was the cheese day disaster. So the whole
Well,
day, which
describe that a little
Mr.
bit.
Scanlon can absolutely attest to, because I was with him for about 12 hours that day. So it started at about 7 a.m. I walked down to meet Mr. Scanlon and one other student and our friendly milkman to drive to 20-30 minutes to another town to pick up our fresh milk. We already had, I think, the goat milk, and we were picking up the cow milk, and it was sloshing around and spilling everywhere on the drive. And so we get back to school, get ready, and then we walk down into the country to the cheesemonger's house, where we commence the warming up the milk. And I guess we burnt it or something. The jury's still out. No one could really agree. We spent about 3 hours arguing about it, and then a whole class a couple weeks later arguing about whether we burnt the cheese or whether the rennet was bad. And so when we were fishing the curd out of the curdled milk, which I was doing, I was probably forearm deep in a vat of goat and cow milk, fishing for curd at the bottom, and it wasn't quite right because there wasn't really enough. It wasn't really as much as there should have been, and it was kind of smelt burnt, and everyone was just totally exhausted and exasperated because we didn't know what happened to all this milk. It was like 50, 60, 70 gallons of milk that we kind of just wasted. And I just ended the day with silky smooth arms and the smell of goat all over me. It was great.
So in that moment, what did you learn on that one? What was the piece for it?
Be careful what rennet you buy, because you might ruin your cheese.
I'm gonna shift gears and let Mr. Scanlon take that one and see if he wants to talk about you and talk about that moment and other moments with you.
Well, interesting. I think Frances would remember that moment too, because she was a part of it. In all seriousness, we came back and manipulated some variables and ended up doing some small batches that actually worked, but we weren't able to say exactly what the problem was, but we did get to make it work. And so I think the kids had a great spirit in knowing that we may get something wrong, but that's science and you stay with it, and you can modify some variables and make it right. So I enjoyed that a lot. That was a turning point for our year too, and me as a teacher. So I was glad you raised that point, Dylan. Good to remember that.
Great. And Megan, and you can embarrass Janae Rose a little bit to talk about her time and her impact in Spain.
Okay, well, I can't really embarrass Janae Rose because I can't think of anything bad or embarrassing that she did, but I can just say that, you know, all of us as educators, when we're working with a group of students, there's always personalities that you know, can really add a lot to the group. And I think that's one of the first things I think of when I think of Janae Rose, is that her kindness from the very beginning and her curiosity. It doesn't surprise me when she explained, that right at the beginning, she was already feeling that kind of overwhelmed feeling of, oh my gosh, I have so many things to explore here. But that didn't ever wane. I mean, that was something I think that Janae Rose it's part of who she is. And so all of the time in her classes and, talking with me or in the common room, it's just, she was always somebody who wanted to know more. And I think that just makes, kind of the ideal SYA student, because you always want someone who is thirsty for all of the knowledge available. I also think, Janae Rose, and I don't know if I've ever told you this directly, but your impact on the kind of goal that we had of speaking Spanish in our common spaces and at school, I really can't remember ever having to ask Janae Rose to switch back to Spanish. I mean, it just wasn't something she did. She didn't break out of what we were asking the students to do ever. It was just when she walked into the building, and I think as well when she left and when she was with her host families, she was so involved in always speaking Spanish that also was great for our community. And lastly, I just have to mention that she took over the birthday club, which was a huge help for me. So she, took over decorating lockers and picking up, supplies that we needed to be able to celebrate each student's birthday. So that was something else. Just those, seemingly small things, but in the end, they really add to the fabric of your community. So gracias, Janae Rose.
Thank you. Pat, do you want to add any other things about Frances and Dylan in light of what we're talking about?
Sure. I thought I'd spend some time thinking about qualities that they have in common, and it didn't take long at all. Intellectual curiosity and just general curiosity, like Megan mentioned about Janae Rose, are both qualities that take a school that may be good and can make it great, and take teachers that are good and can make them great. And both you two had that quality for sure. I also felt, in thinking back about your year, for each of you, you were both very good friends. And that ends up being an amazing quality that creates a class and lasts forever, I'm sure. So I'm very grateful. And both of you expressed immense gratitude at various times during the year, both for specific instances. I remember Frances came back from a long being away from school, and we threw a little party for her. She was just so grateful that someone would organize that, and told me several times. Dylan expressed it a great deal, especially for his host family. So I am grateful in return for all those qualities, and especially in the context of what we're speaking about tonight, to demonstrate that gratitude means a lot to your host families. It means a lot to your teachers. It means a lot to the school in general, and means a lot to me personally. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. And Pat, I know you've been with SWA for 2 decades and been with students who have been able to come through to SWA through scholarship support. Do you want to talk a little bit about, in general, the importance of that in the mix of the kids that you have?
Yeah, in fact, it's a perfect segue, because I think that students who are able to come do express that gratitude and approach their studies, their year, their language acquisition, their host family relationships in ways that make us proud of them and help us see that, it's a kind of investment, right? We're investing in them because we know that those kids who become adults very quickly will contribute, and it's our hope that they will give back. So we're actually modeling it, I think, as a school, and they take it and use it right in the moment, and that is very gratifying to watch, because being an educator more often makes us have to suspend our gratification, and we often don't see the quote unquote payoff as students come and go, and that payoff may come later. But I think with the students that are here, we got to see it in the moment, and that's just a very pleasant thing to be able to do when it's not as common an experience as we think, because I think we all get tied up in the moment. There are a lot of difficult moments to overcome, but it's very important to be able to see something in the moment and appreciate it, which I'm grateful for too.
Thanks. Megan, any other thoughts on how you see the importance of a diverse group of kids, socioeconomic diversity of kids?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think, in an ideal world, everyone would have equal access to all of the things that are available to usually a smaller number of people in our population. And so without having the opportunity to offer financial aid, the idea of having, only one group of students that come from one kind of specific group that are fortunate to have that kind of financial access would cut off the opportunity to so many great students. I mean, if I had known about SYA as a high schooler, I probably would have wanted to do it, but I would have definitely been a student who would have needed financial aid. And I was actually only able to study abroad in college because I had financial aid in college. And, that ability to go abroad and to have that experience personally obviously has had a long-lasting effect on my life. And so I just love the fact that we're able to have students come that wouldn't be able to otherwise because of the giving that people are a part of.
Well said, both of you. Thank you. I'm going to turn back to the students and ask you here's a chance for you to thank the people who made your SWA experience possible, those who've given money, and in two cases, very specific individuals. So I'm going to ask Francis, just what would you, if you were sitting there, right, having gelate with your the Alvarez family, what would you say to them?
I mean, I think I would first just say thank you so much. As you were saying, if I did not get this aid, I would not have gone, and I would not have had all of the amazing experiences that I did. And I think that I really learned so many lessons that, I'm using even right now. I've already started joining so many more community outreach programs near me. I'm doing a lot of volunteer work, and I think that SYA sort of opened up my mind to that and how important it is to invest in your own community, as we did in Italy in our small town. And yeah, plain and simple, if I did not have that aid, I would not have gone. And so I really am eternally grateful to the people that made that experience happen for me.
Thank you. Janae Rose, what about you? And talking to the Bulgari family and others who helped with the Halsey Scholarship.
Well, I would say thank you so much. They've left this indelible mark on my life, and like every day my mind always goes back to Spain in some way, in some lesson that I've learned or some random vocabulary word that I remember from like a lesson back in September. But just the fact that they changed my life so deeply, and then with this endowment, they're doing it every year, and just giving of their money to help other people shows like that they're such good people. And I thank them so much for that, because like maybe I won't become like Senora Ruth and travel and move back to Spain, but still like this will be always a big part of who I am.
You could be RD someday in Spain. We'll keep that in mind, okay? And Dylan, there are a number of people over the years in the SYA family who've given to financial aid, and that means a lot to them. What would you say in general to the people who every year give us money for students to go over?
Well, personally, my dad really always wanted me to see more than he ever saw, learn more than he ever saw, and do more than he ever did. And being from a household that not of great means meant that I would have to earn my way into those things. And without the financial aid and without aid scholarships, I would never have been able to basically travel the world. And I am incredibly grateful for that, because I would otherwise have remained in a small town. Not that I dislike that, but I wouldn't speak these other languages and have seen so much and learned so much about just these random little things that are so enjoyable to know, like the man I met in a castle in Italy that gives you tours through the history of recorded sound. That would never have happened if without financial aid and without the donors. It's like all these crazy happenstantial things, all this serendipitous moments would be impossible. And I'm so grateful that I'm able to experience life like that at the behest of these donors. Yeah.
Well, you guys have said it well. Thank you. Thank you. At this moment, I want to turn it back to Erin and just see if she has questions, or there might be questions that have arisen in the chat box. So I'm going to do that right now.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks to all the students and Megan and Pat. It's been so much fun to listen to you guys. We haven't had any questions come in yet, but there's still a little bit of time if anybody out there wants to ask one. But I do have a few that I'd like to ask, if that's okay. One is, this year's been very different, obviously, and as we're going into our admission season, I would be curious to hear what you guys would say to other young people, young high schoolers who are thinking about something like SYA or want something different in high school. What would you say to them, especially if they were maybe on the fence about, studying or applying for SYA? Start with Dylan.
That's a tricky one. I think if you're on the fence and you're nervous, like, I'm not sure if I can do that. Maybe I'm gonna miss so much. Oh, it's my junior year of high school. There's only 1 year of that, or it's my senior year. I'm gonna miss my senior spring. It's okay, because those are all those moments are still going to happen at SYA and more. You're in another country, you're learning a new language, you're with a new family. Yeah, it's going to be nerve-wracking, and it's going to be really hard at some points, but that's the nature of going abroad as a teenager, as someone who's not even 18. But it's so eye-opening to see the world from still as a kid's perspective, still living with a family, as opposed to in college when you're living in a dorm or something in another place. It's not the same. You won't get the same experience as you would in college. So I think it's absolutely worth it to jump in, and even if you are afraid, to just cross that river. Just do it. I don't know. Just let yourself do it. Basically, that's what I did. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a little weird. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna apply anyway. Let's just see what happens.
Thanks,
why not?
Dylan. I love that. Janae Rose, same question for you.
I would say to a student that's on the fence about applying, definitely just apply. Give yourself the option to see if you could even make it that far. And then the thing is, if you're thinking about it, it's already a sign that you're a different kind of person that would really maybe flourish in the setting, like at an SYA school. So I definitely would say, like, you're young right now, you can do all these things and you can explore, and like the same thing that Dylan was saying, if you're afraid of missing anything, you're not like missing your senior year, your junior year to do nothing. You're missing it to replace it with all these new things that are going to be so cool and that are going to be so unique. And even in the hard moments, because a whole year abroad is, there's definitely going to be some ups and downs. You'll take those with you, and you'll carry all those memories and all that knowledge, and it'll enrich you no matter where you go, no matter what you do with yourself in the future. You're young, and it's gonna be amazing no matter what. So go for it.
Thanks, Janae Rose. What do you think, Francis? What would you say to a high schooler who's thinking about SYA?
Well, I mean, I think sort of the same thing as Janae Rose and Dylan, just do it, just take that leap, just apply, because I don't know that I know anyone that has ever regretted studying abroad. It is such an amazing opportunity, and if you don't apply, then you don't go. It's that simple. If you try, then you've tried. And it's such an eye-opening experience, and it's fun too. It's not just all these difficulties and all this anxiety. It's a really fun environment. And I was at SYA as a sophomore. And so I was sort of able to be surrounded by people who were a little bit older than me. I was still able to make amazing friends. They were all older than me. I didn't find that it was a problem. I think that, just give yourself the opportunity and just try it, because you're not going to regret it. It's not something that you can regret. It's an amazing experience.
Aaron, I have a question to jump in. I'm just sitting here thinking about the upside down world we're living in, particularly with students in school. And I'm just curious, what's going on in your education right now? Are you online or in person, or how's it working? Where are you back? Remind me years where you are and all that. So just quickly, we can go around. Francis, with you back at Berkeley High?
Yeah, so I am a junior at Berkeley High right now. We are 100% online. Potentially we'll be going back after winter break, but there are a lot of very strict guidelines we have to meet, and we aren't there at all. So, I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll go back, but it's actually been a really good experience so far, even though we've been online.
Yeah. And Dylan, you're in California as well, so you're under the same kind of restriction, right?
Yeah, and so I'm a sophomore in college, and my college, I go to Pomona College, which is in LA, and LA specifically mandated that dorms could not open. So we won't find out till December whether we're going back. So I'm in limbo, but it's all right because I'm still enjoying my classes.
Yeah. And are you taking Italian at all?
I'm not. I'm actually taking French right now.
Full circle. Good. Janae Rose, how about you?
I'm a junior at Charlotte Country Day. For me, it's just Country Day, but and we are going half and half. So Mondays and Wednesdays I go to school, and then the rest of the time I'm online.
Great.
We did get a question in the question box, so I'm going to ask that from Jamie Broderick. Hi, Jamie. Thanks for your question. Jamie asks, can you talk about what reentry was like readjusting to life in the US? And Janae Rose, why don't we start with you?
Well, the first day I was a mess because I flew in from Madrid to New York, and I stayed there overnight with my cousin. And I remember leaving the taxi and going gracias to the taxi driver, and they were so confused. So but beyond that, especially because I had to go into quarantine for 2 weeks, that was my only external human interaction, was in the airport or in a taxi. So it was nice that I had online classes so that I could see my peers face to face, and they were also going through the same abrupt reentry as I was. So that was definitely helpful, and the teachers were really supportive. But I mean, I'm pretty close with my family, so I didn't mind being in the house with them. I think in the beginning they were a little concerned. They're like, well, I don't know, you're in Spain, the news are looking pretty bad. But other than that, reentry was actually pretty smooth because I mostly stayed home. I guess it might have been more jarring to actually go outside and see how everything was different.
Dylan, same question for you. What was reentry like coming back to the US after you had spent a year in Italy?
I think although I did very much enjoy SYA, I was ready to go home. Towards the end, I was ready to see my friends and everything. I was ready to graduate because I was graduating a week after I got back. So there wasn't actually a point where I was like shocked to be back. I was home and it was like, you know, the old adage, oh, I changed, but everything else stayed the same. Pretty much. I got back and everything was just like I left it. And I kind of just picked up where I left off. And I was okay with that. It made me content that I still knew what was going on back home.
That's good. And Francis, same question for you about reentry.
So, I mean, for us in Italy, there was definitely a few turbulent weeks leading up to when we eventually had to leave. And I think that although that made it more difficult because there was no solid end, like in Dylan's case, I almost think that that made it easier for me to come home because I knew that I had had this amazing experience, and you know, there were so many outside forces that I can't control that led to me going home. And I think that initially it was a little bit difficult to adjust because obviously I was in quarantine when I came back. But, you know, like Dylan said, everything stayed the same. I was the one that had changed. And I think that it was actually really nice to be able to come home and see everything I had seen before, but from a different perspective. And yeah, I think that was an incredible experience for me.
Really nicely stated, Francis. Thank you. We talked a little bit about the cheese incident earlier, and I'm curious from Francis and Janae Rose specifically, if there are any fieldwork activities that really stood out to you guys and added to your learning in country. We'll start with Janae Rose.
Sorry, I'm like mentally choosing between two different trips. But I remember one time we went to this vineyard and it was around like fall, so the weather was really nice and we all were going around and like plucking the grapes, and we did, I think it got on the Instagram, but we were smashing the grapes with our feet. So we had this big wooden bath pretty much, but it was filled with grapes and we got to smush them up and stomp on them. So that was really, it was just a weird experience. I think we actually we took the juice with us and we drank it. So we all made jokes about drinking beet juice and all that stuff, but it was like bonding. So I guess if there's anyone you ever need to bond with, just get a bunch of grapes and just dance on them together.
Megan, do you have any comments about that particular experience or anything you want to add?
I do remember it was very, you know, there was the kind of two camps of the kids who would try the juice that was coming out before, you know, they would eventually go through the process to get it to wine. And there were some kids who would try it and other kids who were just completely disgusted by the idea. But yeah, I mean, I remember that day very well. It was beautiful. It was one of the first field works that we did when we left. Yeah, I mean, when we actually left campus and went out of Zaragoza, and you know, the kids that were in science class then followed up even further when they got back to kind of go more into the process. But it was really nice that we were able to not only have the science students go, but bring the whole community, and a big group of teachers came. And I think just what Janae Rose was saying, it was, you know, that mix of learning about that process, but also just the bonding piece of it was really fun.
Thanks, Megan. Francis, I'm wondering if there's a fieldwork activity that stands out for you from your time in Italy.
Yeah, so this was actually a fieldwork activity on a school trip. So we were in Bologna and we took a day trip to Parma. and we had to wake up really, really early. And I remember we had to like meet on some random street in the middle of the city, and it was still dark out and everyone was tired. And we got on the bus, and one of my classmates was actually doing the SYA Instagram takeover that day. And so she was like, okay guys, we have to get super excited. We're gonna turn the lights on. We're gonna start singing, you know, we need to get excited. And I still remember she took a picture and she was like, everyone has to look happy. And we were tired, we were exhausted. And I just remember everyone smiling and being happy, even though it was so early. And then obviously just spending the day there was amazing. We went into a cheese factory. We got to see them make cheese. Yeah, it was absolutely amazing.
Pat, any memories from that experience for you?
Well, it tells me that cheese is definitely a theme at SYA Italy. But I would say it's interesting to hear these stories because from the teacher's vantage point, the escursione a sorpresa, which comes very early in the year, which basically gives kids a destination and kicks them out and says, go there and do a few things and get back. And we choose destinations that you can't get to by train, but only by the bus. And we are always, you know, hoping for certain outcomes, and we design it for certain outcomes. And we ask the students, you know, what was their feedback? What was their reflection on this day? And 80% of them tell us the hardest thing we did was work together. So it just proves that no matter where you go in the world or what stimuli there are around you, working with others is probably one of the most important skills that you can learn. And it's always a really nice takeaway from that, and always a surprise to read it, because we might think that they would say that falling in that fountain that day and getting the slime off of me, which happened, but no, the thing they remember most, because it was the most difficult, was cooperation, communication, you know, and you know, just the whole idea of having to stay together for the day. So it's just interesting to teachers what comes out of projects like that we think are really valuable and really fun to watch.
And Aaron, I would just add, because for those listening in on this, that SYA has become much, much more intentional about getting kids out of their seats and kind of using the local community and beyond to really apply language and culture and those other skills like cooperation and critical thinking. And so we've really expanded our curriculum, so it's not just kids sitting in a classroom, you know, learning their language lessons, but it's really kind of using our location to really expand that experiential total immersion kind of learning, which I think, and the students can nod or not, but I think that's much more exciting. I mean, you remember things much more by doing in your hands versus just memorizing things. So we've been very intentional about that. In fact, Pat in Italy kind of led the way with his faculty to really get us going in that direction. It's been exciting to watch as someone overseeing this.
And that's a preview to our webinar for next week, which is all about the curriculum changes that have come as a result of some of the funding from the campaign for SYA. So something to look forward to next week. I have one last question for the students, and then we'll wrap this up. And that is, when you think about yourself before going to SYA, and then you think about who you are now, who you are today, what do you think is the biggest change that occurred in you personally? How did SYA change you, I guess, is maybe a better way to ask that. And why don't we start with Frances?
So, I mean, I think part of my answer is that I feel like it's constantly changing me. I feel like every time I have an experience here, sometimes I feel like I've been prepared for it by my experience at SYA. And so I honestly think that I won't know how it's changed me until, 20, 30, 40 years into the future, because like it changes your life. It can't not change your life. And it's certainly made me a lot more open. Like I said, I've joined so many new like student groups and volunteer opportunities here because of my experience with SYA, and just taking risks in a good way. That's something that I've always struggled with, and SYA really, really opened my mind and my heart to that and how important it can be.
Francis, I feel like for a junior in high school, you're wise beyond your years. I don't think I could have said that better myself. Dylan, same question for you. How do you feel like your SYA experience changed you?
I think the biggest thing I came out with from SYA was perspective. Every day, even now, even this morning, when I walking down the road, I realized a street like this would be so weird to find in Italy, and everyone in Italy would freak out if they saw this. And like being able to like realize that these different countries aren't just different people speaking a different language, eating different food, but everything functions differently. Even if, oh, you think they're Europeans, right? But America functions so much differently than especially mainland European countries in their architecture, in their daily habits, in the way they build roads. Just being able to see every little difference makes me that much more analytical in a way I really enjoy being. Excuse me, there's a truck going by. Yeah, I can see things and appreciate things that I never would have appreciated had I not gone abroad. I can appreciate a good bargain on cheese, but I can also appreciate like the way people interact in Italy. There's a different social norm that they may not be as warm as Americans as strangers, but once you get to know them, they would do anything for you.
Thanks, Dylan. And Janae Rose, same question.
The main takeaway for me from my SYA Spain experience would just be more confidence in myself and what I can do, in the same way that we were talking about how everything is so different. Sorry, I think I have noise too. The same way that everything is so different, but I was dropped in there. Obviously I had support from all the staff and the faculty, but and I found my way, and just knowing that I can do that is really empowering. And having that extra knowledge of speaking another language, it just helps you in so many ways. Like I worked a job over the summer and I had someone come in and they were speaking Spanish and I could actually help them. And I felt like I'm connected to even more people in the States. And what's really interesting now is that I get to compare countries that are connected by the language, that's also are Spanish speaking countries, and see how they're different than Spain. And I get to carry that with me and continue with the whole analytical process that Dylan was talking about. And yeah, I just feel more empowered because I've done something that's so big, and I can see that if I push my limits, if I go out and see that really, some people say the universe is conspiring in your favor. I can see that. Like I was in all these crazy situations and I figured my way out and everything ended up okay.
I have to jump in real quick because when Janae Rose was speaking and she said she was too shy to go up to the SYA rep that came to visit her school, I was like, whoa. So it doesn't, I thought to myself, obviously the SYA experience has that positive effect on a lot of our students, most of them, I would say. So I can definitely, it's hard to imagine that. And I can say that Janae Rose, I definitely now would feel totally comfortable going up to a person to ask them a question, I think.
Well, she's here helping us today, so I think that confidence is really shining. Pat, did you have any observations about Dylan or Francis and the changes that you saw in them over the course of the year?
Well, it's just that I think the self-confidence and I think patience for both of them, and I think because it's true of all SY students, that I think this experience probably instills patience, or it has the potential to instill patience in a student greater than maybe having stayed home. It just tests patience a lot. And I was kind of cataloging in my head certain things that I see so often in students, that there was an aspect of patience to both of them that they had at the end, that it's a learned trait and it's a great skill to have, both manifested in different ways. So that's what I think I see pretty obviously in both of them.
Thanks, Pat. Well, with that, I want to say a huge thank you to Francis, to Dylan, Janae Rose, to Pat and Megan, and to Tom for this conversation about financial aid, your student experience, just all the wonderful things that are happening at SYA recently and to come through this campaign and as we make it through this strange time. So in closing, I do want to ask everybody to help in a number of ways. One, which we always ask, which is to help spread the word about SYA. Please help us with that. This year's funky. The admissions team's usually out traveling, getting into schools, talking, like Janae Rose had mentioned, somebody came to her school. Not able to do that in the same way this year. We're having virtual sessions. And if you know somebody that's interested, please refer them to our website, sya.org. There's a lot of great information there about everything that we're doing and why they should apply. So if you can just help us spread the word, we'd be really grateful for that. Similarly, if you've already made a gift or a pledge to the campaign for SYA, please talk about the campaign with your classmates, your friends, other parents, other people that you know. Tom and I were traveling quite a bit last year to put the campaign in front of people, and you know, that's all been fine. We can't do that the same way this year. So the voices of people who have already committed are so much more powerful in convincing others. So if you've already done so, I encourage you to convince some other people to join you in giving to the campaign. And if you haven't made a gift to the campaign, a gift or a pledge, please open your mind to talking more about that in the coming months as we schedule some virtual meetings and we have more sessions like this where we talk about all of the great outcomes that have been possible because of the campaign for SYA. And lastly, please keep reading and opening our emails and attending our events. We've hosted a bunch just within this last month with some of the women from the first class of SYA, Pat and Megan, along with Mina Kadir from France. We're all on a Meet the RDs panel recently. We've had some informational sessions just about the campaign that generally, and then this one this week and 2 more that are coming up. So we encourage you to listen to those and attend as many as you can. So with that, we look forward to seeing you more at some of these. And I thank you again for attending. Thank you for your deep commitment to SYA's mission, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thanks, guys.